Hi, this is Steve Lentini. Welcome to the podcast, Different Thinking for Different Times. I'm your host. So, this week I wanted to talk about leaders who have small minded thinking. Over the years, and I've been working since 1970, so that's a few years, I've witnessed small minded thinkers, leaders that were very small minded. So, I've witnessed bullies. I've witnessed people who were really so much about ego that it had to be all about them. I've witnessed leaders and owners of fairly big companies that were totally indifferent to out of control behaviors. I've even been part of, hard for me to say, I guess, part of out of control behaviors. And really, the leaders didn't have the tools to even recognize, including myself, their own behaviors that were not healthy or productive. They weren't leading others. Certainly, when you think of the idea of modeling the behavior that they wanted to see, they didn't model very good behaviors. Let's take the case of a real egotistical leader who wanted everything to be controlled. And, this person didn't I don't think that the person thought that they had small-minded thinking, what I call the acorn brain. Certainly, they didn't realize they lived in a miracle. And today, I think the company suffered greatly going through COVID. But they might have had a different result if the leadership wasn't so small-minded. And when you have ego and you're berating others in front of others and then causing uh, really internal conflict and people vying for attention because this person was perceived as so powerful. What happened is they took the power away from others, and they were modeling poor behavior by calling people out, by talking about others and gossiping in management meetings, gossiping about their own team and employees and the sales staff, and really not healthy, not productive. So when you think of the indifferent leaders that I experienced. So the indifferent leaders allowed behavior by not putting boundaries around people that was unacceptable. The sales team was abusing the warehouse and customer service and the collections department, the credit department, and behaving in nasty ways. And then what happened is the leaders created these little fiefdoms that they were unaware of. And there were people sneaking back to some of the so-called leaders, the ones that hid behind the scenes. Their own managers were sneaking back to some of the other people in the company and circumventing any rules that were discussed or even changes. So if the secret subterranean leaders, right, these were people that were in sales or other departments, if something was mentioned at a leadership meeting with the owners that might impact some of the subterranean leaders, this other level that they had created, they would get ambushed. So people would show up and say, "Hey, we heard you're going to do this and that, and we're not going to go for it." Or when they announced it, there'd be an uproar because everybody knew. And so there was backstabbing and disloyalty and gossiping. Again, very unhealthy. And the owners of the company were indifferent, and that indifference allowed the behavior an approval. It's a tacit approval. Indifference equals acceptance. So leaders have a responsibility to put boundaries up around certain behaviors. But if the leaders are out of control, if the leaders are leading some of the poor behavior, or perhaps they're not, they're just indifferent, When I say indifferent, it's kind of like a spaghetti noodle. If you ever tried to pick it up off the table, if it spilled out of the plate, it wiggles all around. And that's exactly what it was like. And it was, again, very unhealthy. Eventually, the company was sold. It had to be. And the owners didn't receive anywhere near the value of the company. It was a fairly large company. So then, when leaders, let's say that you have a team of leaders, let's say it's a fairly large company, and your leadership team gossips about other departments' performance to deflect blame about their own department's performance, and they're among the what I call the water cooler talk. They're not talking straight to each other. It's a lack of integrity. Because what happens is when leaders are gossiping, they're encouraging more gossip, which means employees are gossiping, and they don't complain to someone who could do something about it. I call that a complaint with a request. That's small-minded thinking. And it's breaking a law of physics because physics is about energy in motion. So if you think of communication withheld as breaking that law of motion, there's an energy to communication. When you're gossiping about other departments, if you're a leader and then you don't go to the other department and tell the leader what you're telling everyone else. I mean, first of all, what I'd like to encourage is stop, and then going forward, go to the leader. Complaint with a request, I call it. Go to the leader that's affecting the performance of your department and tell them and make a request, even if it begins a dialogue, a negotiation. Now you've taken it to the person that can do something about it, and the law of physics works because the energy continues. When you complain to people that can't do anything about it, you're gossiping, and the law of communication, that physical energy, is broken. But here's the thing, people perceive it. And they tell others, oh, so-and-so was complaining about XYZ department and the department head and the people, and saying how it's not helping her department or his department. That gossip creates an energy that eventually can be very negative, cause turnover, even take the company down over time. It's not healthy. So I encourage people to teach it. I'm glad to talk about it in companies, what I call the complaint with a request. And that's even in our relationships, is instead of complaining to others about your significant other, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever it is, your husband, you take it to them because they can't do anything about it if you don't begin a negotiation. And it might be uncomfortable. I worked in a company where the behavior of the sales team was totally out of control. Everyone was having affairs with other people throughout the company, and this goes back 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago. And that behavior became unspoken. Everyone knew about it, but management never dealt with it. In fact, at one time, one of the founders was involved in it, leading the charge. And most of the senior management team was doing the same thing. And then the sales team was doing the same thing. Inappropriate behavior, inappropriate relationships. And at one point in time in the history of that company, I too got involved in an inappropriate relationship and learned a huge lesson. That was the beginning of learning 40 years ago about what I didn't know that I didn't know about myself. And the acorn brain that I talk about, that small-minded, limited thinker, was running me instead of me running it. And that's what I'm talking about. We live in something infinite. It's a miracle. And the gift of all the things that have occurred in my life was that I finally learned and grew. I understood that all of life was feedback. When the results didn't match the picture, when it was uncomfortable and I didn't like it, I realized it was actually resistance in life, building me for a greater future. And today I'm teaching people about this methodologies and about modeling the behavior they want to see and thinking about what is the end in mind that they'd like to achieve, and never think that what they do that's out of integrity goes unnoticed, because it does. It's a law of energy. It's a law of physics. And so for the last 35, 40 years, making sure that I conduct myself with integrity, and it's an amazing journey. And then 20 years ago, 19 years ago, November 18th this year, on 2002, with my near-death experience in the infinite, when we go back to what's next, where we come from, which is what we do, there is no such thing as death. As you know, I call it what's next. Nothing from the small-minded thinker was there. Fascinating. One with the infinite, infinite love, infinite grace, infinite mercy. And all of the stories that we have heard about God being vindictive and angry and you're going to go to hell, that's all small-minded thinking. If it's small-minded, it's not part of the infinite. It's not part of where we come from. But we come here to learn and grow. The gift of all the resistance we feel in life and all the mistakes we make is so that we can learn and grow. We don't come here to be perfect. By the way, anybody who thinks they're perfect, that's their gift to learn, that they're filled with hubris and ego. And as I say in my book, you might be full of SH, or you might be full of number 2. That's the other edition of the book. Different, but similar, because I wrote that one for the woke crowd. When we think that we know better, which we see all over, modeled all over in this society, it's something to overcome, actually, and begin a negotiation instead of pointing fingers and making others wrong. And it's the same in companies. Companies have healthy cultures when people learn to speak up. A complaint, they take their complaint to the person that can do something about it, even if it's a fellow employee. I had people try to tell me back then, 30 something years ago, there were places I could improve and things I could do better. Some I listened to and some I didn't. I continued with a behavior that I thought no one knew. And they knew. And of course, the gift in that behavior was learning how to overcome it. And I'm grateful that I went through every experience I have, because regret does not exist. When we leave from here to there, if it sounds small-minded, by the way, it's not part of what we come from. There's no judgment. In fact, in my life review, only the good I had done was mentioned, flashed before me. And as I've said before, there was only the now. People go searching for God or the goddess or the life force, the creator, the Brahma, the Buddha, the Christ, the Muhammad, the Abraham. And it's all small-minded thinking separating into all those religions. And it's good. It's healthy that people have a belief, but not when they make others wrong. And they live wishing people be damned in hell forever, because guess what? Again, if it's small-minded, hell does not exist. At least in what I saw. And the infinite, the divine God was in the now. There was no past and no future. And nothing from the acorn brain, our small-minded thinker. And that's what taught me that's what we're here to overcome. So as leaders, we have to model the behavior we want to see. We have to complain to the people that can do something about it when there's errors, whether it's a manager, a co-manager, a fellow manager, a peer, a president, a CEO, a chairman of the board. We have to enlighten them and be willing to risk their wrath, because at least we're continuing the energy in a healthy way. And something could benefit, something could grow. That person could grow. the company could grow. And we have to learn that all of life is a gift, and the uncomfortable and the mistakes we make are there for a reason. So can imagine if somebody would finally say, you're gossiping a lot. Why don't you take that to Mary who can do something about it, or Joe who can do something about it? Now you're getting feedback. You would be exposed as a gossiper. That would be a gift, and get over it. We have to get over ourselves. Because some people would say they were embarrassed and shamed by the mistake. So what? What if they never knew? Imagine not knowing. They'd be an idiot gossiper for the rest of their life and wonder why their life wasn't working and why everyone else was so angry and upset with them. And when, after all, they were doing them a favor by gossiping. Eventually, the word got to the person. It's a lack of integrity. And small-minded thinking is what our job is here to overcome. That's why we have it. It's a gift. Mistakes are a gift. Cause and effect. In a cause and effect world that we live in a physical world, for this temporary time, right? It's a blink of an eye in time. We grow from learning about our mistakes if we're awake enough to catch them. Because some people just complain. Their story is, look what happened to me, and look what's happening to me. And many, many people will commiserate with them instead of saying, as I say in my coaching, all right, where are you in this? How did you create it? What's it here to teach you? How can you change? Everything is a gift. Resistance in life is building your muscle for a greater future only if you get it. We understand going to the physical gym, working out, running, going to yoga, stretching, anything we undertake physically, we feel resistance. The new level of stretching, the extra mile, the added weight. We know what it does with us physically, and most people don't spend time exercising their brain. They don't even question it. They believe they're thinking. That's hubris. And we can see so many examples of it. Our leaders have hubris, telling us, and I don't care the party, all sides stand up and say they know better instead of educating the public. In a free country, it's our job to make choices. Mandating things, pointing fingers, acting like, oh, we know better whether you're Democrat or Republican as a leader, it makes you full of SH. And I have a podcast, by the way. You may be full of SH. I can send you the link if you'd like, or you can find it on Spotify and all the. If you Google "you may be full of SHIT," you'll find it. And I talk directly about all the BS and how we have to get over ourselves and learn to accept differences in others and negotiate. It's okay to have a different position. And by the way, in politics, that's their job. They negotiate, find a way to compromise, bring people on board. That's what you do if you're mature and if you're modeling the behavior you want to see. Any questions? Email me, steve@stevelentini.com. That's Steve at Steve. L is in Linda, E-N is in Nancy, T is in Tom, INI.com. Steve@stevelentini.com. You can go to Amazon and find my books. I have books under Stephen Lentini, author, and Steve Lentini, author. And you'll find a collection of books. And where I'm calling people out on BS, Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life is a book that gives people tools, looking at all the ways that we have to expand into infinite thinking and leave behind small-minded thinking. Forgiveness, gratitude, generosity, and many other places. Leadership, where we have to stretch way beyond anything we've previously learned about all of those topics. Grace and mercy, love, prosperity and abundance. It's a wonderful thing because you can do more with it. and stop the victim consciousness. Wake up and become the master of your own circumstances, and to forget other people's journey. They're none of your business. They're none of my business. Manage your own life and stop making others around you wrong with small minded, limited thinking. Break into the infinite. Model the creation and the creator of this amazing miracle we live in. Thank you.